Episode 1 of Earth Abides opens with Ish scribbling stuff in his journal, having his coffee, not picking up the phone call from his mother, and then leaving his cabin in the woods to venture out into the mountains in search of interesting rocks because, well, he is a geologist. While he is looking at these stones, he fails to notice the rattlesnake hiding in plain sight and gets bitten by it. He tries calling 911, but since he is panicking, he drops the phone into a crevice. He pulls out his pocket knife, makes an incision near the spot where the snake has bitten him, and tries sucking out the poison. As the cold sweats begin, Ish rushes back to his cabin and then collapses into his bed. He keeps slipping in and out of consciousness. Forest rangers or someone from emergency services arrive at Ish's doorstep to see if there's anyone in the cabin. Since Ish is unable to respond, they just leave. I don't know what the protocol is for checking a place where the owner's car is in the driveway and the door is probably unlocked, because I don't think Ish was in the state to lock the door behind him. But not stepping into the premises to do a thorough investigation seems odd. However, that ends up being a sort of blessing in disguise because as Ish sleeps off the effects of the snake bite in his cabin, the world around him crumbles away due to a deadly pandemic. When Ish finally begins to function normally again and leaves his cabin to do a supply run at the town nearby, he realizes what has happened as he sees rotting corpses everywhere and reads that the U.S. government has been suspended. He rushes to his parents' place and finds out that they've died. He buries them in the backyard and tries to make sense of this new normal. After that pretty effective opening act of the episode, we see Ish taking a trip through the town and come across dead bodies literally everywhere. He goes to the retail store to resupply his stocks and get arms and ammunition for his survival. He decides to drive across the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge to see if there are any survivors in the city, only to find out that it's barricaded such that there's no way for his car to pass. So, he turns his car and goes all the way to Las Vegas. The resort city has power, which is why all the lights are on, but there are no people. Ish enters one of the hotels, and when he realizes that there are no guests, he enjoys the place's facilities while walking around stark naked. That's when he comes across Anne and Milton, two people who have miraculously survived the apocalypse. No, they are not married. They just happen to be at the same place at the worst time imaginable. Milton, who has conveniently recorded all the news for the past few weeks, fills in Ish on everything that he has missed. Apparently, a COVID-19-like virus spread all across the world. Only this time, none of the remedies and vaccines worked, and people dropped like flies. Anne says that some kind of mysterious immunity has allowed people like her, Milton, and Ish to pull through, but she doesn't see it as a blessing because she has to bear the sadness of living while her loved ones are all dead. Ish wants to leave the place and search the country for survivors, but Anne and Milton have given up such aspirations and want to die by suicide after using up the hotel's resources. They're more than happy to include Ish in this plan of theirs, but since Ish isn't that nihilistic yet, he decides to leave the premises and Las Vegas as well. As he is leaving, we hear 2 gunshots, which means that Milton has shot Anne and then himself. It's unclear if Milton and Anne would have killed themselves if Ish didn't interfere in their lives. I don't exactly know why Ish's presence motivated Milton and Anne to quicken their plan of dying after using up the resources available in Las Vegas. I guess Milton and Anne had already processed and moved past all the emotions that Ish was feeling. But watching him experience the pain and despair that they had once felt deteriorated their resolve to live longer than they actually wanted to. And even though these 2 people were total strangers, their death was devastating for Ish. He tries to kill himself by driving his car at breakneck speed, but when he sees a dog in the middle of the road, he puts that plan on the back burner and decides to restart life with his canine friend at his parents' house. He essentially goes back to school to read up on everything that one can learn about life. He keeps himself busy by working out, eating as healthy as possible, looking after his dog, and driving his car in circles while telling himself to keep it together. A whole year passes by in this fashion. But at the end of Earth Abides, Episode 1, Ish notices smoke on the horizon. Well, that can mean only one thing. There's another survivor in his vicinity. I don't know why it took Ish this long to notice that there are other people around. Maybe that other survivor was trying to be inconspicuous in order to avoid attracting the attention of survivors who could resort to unethical actions, now that all boundaries of morality have gone for a toss due to the apocalypse. It's only after they realized that they were alone that they began loosening up. In that case, Ish is going to need all the luck that exists on that godforsaken planet while approaching this survivor, because if they are too anxious and jumpy, Ish might end up with a bullet in his head. Episode 2 of Earth Abides opens with Isherwood and Lucky meeting Emma, the only other survivor in the neighborhood. Emma obviously gets nervous after seeing a man approaching her house, but as soon as she learns that Ish means no harm, she lets him in. Through her conversation with Ish, we learn that she is originally from Pensacola. Her father was in the military and her mother was a nurse. Emma used to cut her sister's hair. That's why she has some barbering skills. As a family, they used to do a lot of camping. Hence, Emma knows how to forage and hunt well enough to make it through the apocalypse. It's also apparent that Emma has a strong will, or else she wouldn't have made it this far. But since she is lonely, she decides to move in with Ish. To be honest, I was expecting this trust-building phase to last longer. As a man in a post-apocalyptic world, regardless of one's sex or gender, I would have taken my time before I trusted another survivor this easily, because desperate times make people very desperate, even though they don't have to. I guess the plot of this show doesn't need that kind of conflict, and that's why Ish and Emma get along so easily. Anyway, while Emma looks around Ish's house, Ish cuts down the noose that he had arranged in case he wakes up one day with the intention of ending it all. He doesn't need it anymore because now he has a reason to live. When Emma finds out that rats have eaten through Ish's packaged food, the duo goes on a supply run. They eat, they talk about fishing, then they eventually get to the topic of how humans are the virus, and Mother Nature has essentially erased them so that Earth can heal. Emma says that despite being labeled a virus, she won't go down without a fight. That leads to a montage of Emma and Ish enjoying each other's company while making Ish's house feel like a home. Eventually, their relationship turns sexual, and this show wins the prize for the most boring and sauceless representation of passion and romance that I have ever seen. After doing the naughty, Ish writes in his journal, while Emma craves some ice cream. So Ish finally decides to get some solar panels so that the house can have some power. However, while installing them, Ish takes a tumble and injures himself. It's not too serious, and he begins his recovery process pretty soon thanks to Emma and her medical expertise. A few months later, Emma announces that she is pregnant, and that causes Ish to get anxious because there aren't any operational medical facilities that'll help her with delivering the baby. When Emma assures him that her body is more than capable of birthing the baby all on its own, Ish's worry decreases by a few notches, and he decides to hit the library to learn everything there is to learn about pregnancy. Ish buys all the stuff that Emma currently needs and will need in the future. Ish also learns how to kill a cow and butcher it properly so that Emma gets all the protein that she needs to keep herself and the baby healthy. However, it's easier said than done, and Ish goes through hell to obtain beef. Since the aforementioned solar panels have started working, storing the meat for a prolonged period of time isn't an issue anymore. That said, a totally different issue arises: rats. And I'm not talking about 5 to 10 rats. I'm talking about literally thousands of rats roaming around the neighborhood in search of anything that they can sink their tiny teeth into. Ish and Emma try their best to prevent the rodents from getting in, but Lucky gets injured in the process. At the end of Earth Abides Episode 2, as the world enters the second year of the apocalypse, the cats clean up the area by eating all the rats. Conveniently enough, that's when Emma's body decides to push out the child. The delivery doesn't go as swimmingly as expected, as Ish has to turn the baby while it is in Emma's womb so that it doesn't get stuck. Ish has an anxiety attack as he starts thinking about his parents' deaths and what he is going to do if Emma dies during childbirth. After Ish finds his bearings, things get relatively easy. The baby enters the world, and she is named Heather by the happy couple. This somehow prompts Emma to use her graffiti skills to announce her house address to the world so that any other survivor out there can get the help that the couple can provide. Going by that last shot, it looks like there's another person out there, but it's not clear if this individual is looking for help or to hurt others. Third episode opens in the 6th year of this post-apocalyptic Earth. Ish is seen driving through the woods, and he either hits a baby mountain lion and injures it, or he hits a baby mountain lion that was already injured. While deciding whether or not he should put it out of its misery, he notices a girl looking at him. Ish chases her down and offers her a place to stay, and the girl chooses to come with him, albeit pretty reluctantly. The baby mountain lion magically vanishes from the road, and Ish drives back home with food and that girl. Ish and Emma have 2 kids now, Heather and Alex, with a third on the way. And they've a couple living with them too, Jorge and Maureen. Although all of them try to welcome the girl into the house, she refuses to budge from the back of Ish's pickup truck. They are afraid that they've separated the girl from her family, and they have to make sure that her family knows that she is safe, or check out if they are dead, thereby making the girl their responsibility. While Ish and Jorge return to the spot where the former found the girl, Maureen connects with the girl because both of them have endured physical abuse in the past. Ish and Jorge do find the girl's family's shack, but there's nothing there. Maureen motivates the girl to take a bath, and while she cleans herself up, Maureen goes through her backpack. Amongst various haunting sketches and trinkets, Maureen finds a letter from the girl's mother. It reveals that the girl's name is Eevee and that she is a victim of her father's abuse, which has rendered her mute. In her dying moments, Eevee's mother had written that letter requesting the girl's savior to accept her and give her the love and shelter that she couldn't. Maureen shares this info with the rest of the group, and they collectively decide to throw Eevee out of the house. I'm just kidding. Of course, they decide to adopt Eevee and give her the space and time she needs to come out of her shell. Maureen is happy about this decision, but she is also sad that yet another girl has endured what she had to go through in the past. Jorge tries to get Maureen to open up about her traumatic backstory, but it seems like she isn't ready to shed light on that part of her life yet. The episode decides to move forward in time to show the birth of Joey, Ish, and Emma's third child. While celebrating the kid's first birthday, Ish and the rest find a group of 4 circling their territory, but they mean no harm. They've also seen the aforementioned advertisement put up by Emma and come looking for food and shelter. This group includes Jean, Ezra, Molly, and Rafe. Rafe is apparently Jean and Ezra's son, and Molly is the stepmother. I guess you'd call them a throuple. Jean used to be a singer, Ezra used to be a club owner, which is where he met Jean, and Molly is a doctor. Anyway, Ish is hesitant about letting them stay in the neighboring house, but since they have a kid and Molly's medical expertise could come in handy, Emma convinces Ish to change his mind. Later on, Ish even agrees to take Ezra, Jean, and Molly along with him and Jorge for a supply run. Ish lays down the rules, but only Ezra follows them because he sticks with Ish, even though he yaps a lot. Meanwhile, Jean gets busy looking for booze, and Molly nearly gets mauled by a Malinois dog at the hospital as she is looking for meds. Molly's gamble pays off, though, because she collects a lot of medicine, something that Ish thought wasn't available anywhere in his locality. To celebrate all this, the whole unit holds a campfire party at night, where Jean sings one of her favorite songs, Louis Armstrong's "What a Wonderful World." When nobody is looking, Jean downs that bottle of liquor that she had taken from the shop. Molly confronts her, and that's when it's revealed that Jean is pregnant, and she wants to induce a miscarriage through alcohol consumption. Molly comforts Jean, and she assures her that everything is going to be all right. Elsewhere, Jorge gives Maureen a peek into his childhood, and that somehow motivates Maureen to give Jorge a peek into her. I'll let you imagine. The following day, Jorge gives Ish a big hammer so that he has something that reflects the growth in his personality, I suppose. Then we get a montage, accompanied by one of the corniest songs in existence, where Jean and Maureen give birth to their respective children. At the end of Earth Abides, Episode 3, the episode makes yet another time jump. It's year 14 of this post apocalyptic timeline, and everyone is celebrating Heather's birthday. Eevee is still not talking, Lucky is still around, and Alexander Ludwig is wearing another god awful wig to show that Ish has aged. Out of all the kids, it's Joey who loves books as much as Ish. While taking a trip to the library, a storm hits San Francisco, prompting Ish and Joey to rush back home. They are confident that they're going to weather this storm, and that's exactly when they realize that Lucky had ventured outside and been crushed by a branch. Yes, the dog is dead. They cry about it for a bit, but then the episode makes another time jump into the future. And, on a random day, a mountain lion decides to attack Eevee and Joey. Ish takes on the wild animal while Eevee cries out for help. That's where the episode ends. Is that the same mountain lion that Ish had hit with his pickup truck all those years ago? After Ish gets attacked in Episode 3, all the survivors come together to save him in Episode 4's opening moments. Together, all of them apply pressure on his wounds while Molly cleans him and stitches him up. During the procedure, Ish also briefly stops breathing. However, Molly performs CPR to ensure he stays with them. Although Ish sustains many fatal wounds on his body, he miraculously lives to see another day. For obvious reasons, his injuries take time to heal. However, he eventually seems to make a full recovery, with only a few scars left behind on his body. To avenge Ish's death, Emma goes to the forest with her gun. As soon as she spots the mountain lion from a distance, she shoots it multiple times. She does this to ensure that the lion does not attack any of her loved ones again. When Ish finally starts showing signs of recovery, Molly visits him and tells him she cannot believe he is still alive despite sustaining many fatal injuries. She commends his strength and says he would not have made it if it wasn't for his ability to keep fighting. Ish responds by saying that he only stayed in bed while everyone else did all the heavy lifting. He gives Molly all the credit for using her medical forte and saving him. This is when Molly reveals she never completed medical school. She recalls how she flunked out after the first year and always felt incompetent. However, when the pandemic destroyed nearly the entire human population, she got to adopt the tag of a doctor and live a dream of her previous life. She also says she is surprised she managed to save Ish. Ish then assures her that she was able to save him because she accepted her setbacks instead of running away from them. Since Earth Abides is about survival and community and not about Ish's individual journey, it makes sense that the series jumps ahead to a few years in the future instead of solely walking through Ish's road to recovery. After its first arc, Earth Abides moves to a timeline where Ish has almost made a full recovery, and the survivor community is up and thriving again. Many younger members of the community also grow up and become direct contributors to the community. Although Ish and Emma's responsibilities as parents are reduced significantly, they still work hard to ensure humanity's survival. After growing up in the survivor community, two younger survivors, who were born after the pandemic, decide to set out on a trip. Since they are old enough to look after themselves, their parents do not hold them back from exploring the world and learning more about it. One of the two leaving survivors is Emma's daughter. Owing to this, Emma worries whether she will be able to keep herself safe in the outside world. Her daughter assures her that she has taught her enough skills to be able to keep herself safe and survive in the world beyond the boundaries of their protected home. Soon after the young survivors leave, the others realize they are running short of water. Ish and Jorge visit a nearby dam, hoping to understand what happened to the water. They not only find a dried-up river, but also notice a pipeline from the dam has been severely corroded and destroyed. Ish estimates they only have a week to survive with the remaining water unless it rains. Moments later, a few vehicles pass above them on the dam, forcing them to flee the scene. Although Ish and his team leave before the survivors can come and talk to them, the new set of survivors follow them to their home and approach them with warmth. Ish, as always, is apprehensive about letting them stay. However, their leader, Charlie, peacefully offers him their remaining water and also promises to help them dig a well with a boring machine. Since Ish and his people really need a water source, he is forced to agree to let them stay. Ish tries to convince Emma that there is something wrong with Charlie. Emma brushes off his claims by saying that he said similar things about previous survivors who joined them. Even though Ish agrees he has previously been wrong about people and their motives, he refuses to believe that he is mistaken about Charlie. Emma firmly believes that Ish only feels threatened by Charlie's arrival because he questions his position of authority by swaying everyone with his charm. However, deep down, Ish genuinely believes that Charlie is up to no good. While Emma wonders what will happen if they fail to dig out the well, Ish fears that successfully digging the well will lead to more dire consequences. Almost throughout the Earth Abides episode, Charlie and his men struggle to successfully dig out a well. However, just when everyone starts losing hope, a fountain of water splashes out of the ground, revealing the exact spot where they must set up their well. To Ish's dismay, his biggest fear materializes, forcing him to reconsider his position in the community. Ish was considered somewhat of a leader in the clan before Charlie arrived. However, after Charlie finds a solution to one of the biggest issues experienced by the survivors and successfully provides them with a resource essential for their survival, he questions Ish's place as the leader. Fifth episode begins with the community celebrating the high of hitting water. Isherwood watches Charlie counsel Alex from afar how to flirt with Eevee. It is clear this does not sit well with Ish. At the same time, Emma questions Perry about their group's next destination. The discussion doesn't get too far thanks to Charlie interrupting with a triumphant speed that ends with everyone chanting his name. Ish is in the same place on his balcony that he was earlier when he hears a woman scream. At about the time he looks down at Eevee's cottage, he sees Silas standing guard, and Charlie emerges seconds later. Ish yells at him, but he practically ignores him while walking back to his RV. Perry is waiting for him and is clearly just as upset as Ish. Charlie lays this off by making a snide comment about him sleeping alone. By the time Ish arrives, Maureen and Molly have already deduced that Charlie raped Eevee, although she never came out and admitted it. None of Ish's people are particularly happy about this discovery, especially Maureen. Despite this, they are even less happy when Emma says they don't have any option but to kill him. After some debating, the group decides to put it to a vote. Jean is the first to cast her vote as a yes. Ezra and Molly vote yes as well. Jorge initially votes no, but Maureen persuades him otherwise. After the vote, Ish confronts Charlie and asks him to leave nicely. Charlie only makes matters worse by insulting Eevee and saying the only way he is leaving is with Ish's wife, Emma. Charlie continues to joke about taking care of Alex and Joey and setting an example for them. By the time the conversation is done, Ish is surrounded by all of the members of his community except for Maureen and Eevee. Charlie only continues to joke, but it is Ish who gets the last laugh after he bludgeons Charlie to death with the hammer Jorge gave him. Ish's conversation with Emma later that night clearly suggests that he has a problem with what he did. Emma doesn't appear to care so much and practically tells him he did a good thing. It doesn't help matters that Joey nearly catches him cleaning the blood off his hammer. The following morning, Ish's people subtly tell Perry that Charlie left and won't be returning. It takes her a few minutes, but she finally grasps the meaning of what they are telling her. She also asks if that means that she needs to leave, and Jean makes it clear that she has a place for it as long as she wants it. Things don't go nearly as smoothly when Silas and Corey show up looking for Charlie. It doesn't them or the others nearly as long as it did Perry to realize what happened to Charlie. Everyone stays except for Silas, and leaving is not of his own choice because he practically comes back minutes later, begging to stay. Ish doesn't let him. He also has to tell Alex that Charlie had to leave because he hurt Eevee. This doesn't go so well either, and ends with Alex storming off. 20 years after the pandemic, Ish helps Joey unveil his new project to the community. Although there are still a few tweaks before completion, it appears that Joey has created a modified version of Da Vinci airplane. When fully charged, Joey claims the craft can do a round trip of 200 miles. Although he remains in the background, Alex clearly doesn't share the others' excitement. Later that night, when Ish reads a bedtime story to Joey, he claims to have a fever. Ish administers him soon kind of root concoction from the kitchen. Later that night, Joey comes into Ish and Emma's room, covered in sweat. Minutes later, Ish is with Molly, who appears to be administering to Corey and several others. Although Ish attributes the illness to a common cold, it's clear that Molly thinks it has something to do with the original virus. At one point, she even encourages Ish to stay away and says that the new strain appears to be infecting people that it skipped over last time. Upon learning about Joey, Molly encourages Ish to bring him to the makeshift hospital, but Ish wants no part of it. With the illness spreading so far and so fast, Emma seeks out Maureen's help. Eevee also volunteers her help after hearing about Joey. Despite all this, Ish has still refused to take Joey to the makeshift hospital and continues trying to treat him at home. While trying to bring down Joey's fever, Ish asks him where he would go if he could take his plane anywhere. Joey says that he wants to see giant redwood and humpback whales. Ish also has a vision of Charlie while trying to care for Joey. As time passes, Ish spends every waking minute in Joey's room. At one point, when he finds the opportunity, Alex practically asks Ish if he would be as concerned if he was the sick party. Alex rushes off before Ish can respond. Sometime later, Heather returns without Rafe. As time passes and Joey's condition worsens, Ish begins to think that the universe is demanding Joey's life because he took Charlie's. At one point, Ish becomes so desperate that he bikes into the city's hospital to search for meds. Even though he finds all kinds of meds, he stops at the chapel area and asks Jesus to take his life instead of Joey's. This is practically how the episode ends. Episode 6 of Earth Abides starts in year 20, with Heather talking about her journey with Rafe. They drove north together, but they didn't see another living person on their odyssey. They found a beach and didn't seem like they're going to leave. The pair were happy, enjoying their time in tranquil bliss, with them both making a vow to be together. With so many desolate places, Rafe and Heather saw it as a sign that there are little breadcrumbs of a life meant for them to pick up and continue. Interestingly, the pair find arrows and numbers painted on rocks and on the side of buildings, so they decided to follow, only it led them to nowhere. They eventually settled for a spot right up on the edge of a dangerous cliff face, which was their last spot before heading home. However, out in the woods, they ended up finding a strange, bearded man who threatens Rafe with a knife and fatally stabs him. Heather kills the guy, but unfortunately she's on her own, and after weeks of traveling, she made it back to their commune. That man who threatened them and killed Rafe, well, it turns out it was actually Silas. What are the odds of that, eh? Meanwhile, Joey is still struggling with his brain fuzzy. Joey is convinced that Ish has given up on him, although he returns from the hospital more determined than ever. He has plans to try and transfer his immunity across to his son. Heather pleads with her dad to stop, bringing up that there's medicine being made now and that may do the trick. Unfortunately, in the wake of this, Jean pours herself a drink, but only one has shot, thankfully, in honor of Rafe. When Joey's fever gets worse, Ish sorts out an ice bath to try and break it and cool him down. He brings Jorge in to help, given he's a man of faith, and hopes for the best. Some of the other residents, like Corey, do recover, but Joey, unfortunately, passes away. Ish falls off the deep end, believing their hope for reigniting the old world has gone. He's poured everything into his son, becoming the savior of their commune, and of course, it's not enough. Emma is teary and tries to talk Ish around in the library. She reminds him that they have other children to look after, and Ish's behavior is not exactly healthy. Sure, he's grief-stricken, but he can't throw away the life they've built together. Ish does eventually come to terms with Joey's death and eventually goes back to teaching the new generation. Ish breaks the chalk in his hands in half, explaining to the young minds that the old world had a slew of problems. They can't take for granted the beautiful abundance they currently have. He no longer wants to try and drag the old world into the new, believing they should live in harmony with what they have and with each other. We then cut to year 21. Ish packs up Joey's belongings but stumbles upon a journal. Inside, Joey has a whole bunch of entries here, including diagrams and various ideas for getting inventions working. One in particular involves an antenna and reaching out with a makeshift radio, looking for transmissions from other survivors. The whole community come together and work through Joey's radio, punching in different transmissions and various frequencies, trying to communicate with the outside world. In between this, they head to the abandoned playground as a group and decide to play baseball. Let's hope no cougars show up and maul them, eh? Anyway, on the field, Ish speaks to Heather, who brings up the numbers she's been seeing everywhere. Turns out they're actually a frequency 147, 225. It's California, and they actually get a reply. There are 77 people in Point Lobo, which used to be a state park, and that's who Ish is currently communicating with. This group have settled by the ocean to fish, and although they all have their reservations, they're all in agreement that this is destiny and decide to reach out. We then cut to year 50. Ish is a lot older now and walks with Heather's oldest son, handing over the hammer he's been carrying all these years. It's a symbolic gesture to pass on the knowledge and the lessons learned, ready for a new group to take over when he passes. The area is full of different houses, and it seems everybody is now living in harmony with a newfound appreciation for the wider world.